The con by Maud Beaton is not totally original. Many details were taken from Cassie Chadwick's work by the television program. Elizabeth Betty Bigley, the daughter of a farmer, was born in October 1857 in Ontario, Canada. She was one of 8 children, but her aspirations were more ambitious. When she was 13, she first faked an inheritance notice, saying the bank had given her the modest amount of money she was supposed to inherit from her recently departed uncle. Despite being apprehended and detained a few months later, Betty remained unfazed, and as she grew older, she started to plot increasingly complex plans. She created a paper trail at the age of 22 to support her claim to be an heiress. Betty used the loans her fictitious inheritance procured to purchase pricey goods with checks. She paid extra and received change in exchange. The paper's announcement of her marriage led the irate merchants to her house. After 12 days, her spouse filed for divorce, despite having paid off their obligations. However, Betty produced a very convincing letter claiming Marie Rosa had passed away, which they received when they sought for restitution. After posing as a clairvoyant for a few years, Betty married several of her clients, including C.L. Hoover, who passed away and left her a sizable inheritance. She took the money, changed her name to Lydia DeVere, and fled the city. She pretended to be a psychic financial advisor in Cleveland. Joseph Lamb was one of her well-paid clients. She conned him into cashing a fraudulent check, which resulted in their both being arrested. Despite being found guilty, she was only sentenced to 3 years before being released early due to her pledge to improve. After that, she would marry Chadwick, a well-known doctor in Cleveland, and became Cassie Chadwick. Her neighbors were attracted by her extravagant spending and her mysterious past. That's when she pulled off her biggest prank, when Cassie Chadwick met her husband's buddy in New York and asked him to go with her when she visited her father. She began a rumor that she was Andrew Carnegie's illegitimate daughter and was going to inherit a portion of his fortune. Alone, she entered the Carnegie mansion. However, Cassie spoke with the housekeeper under the guise of verifying a maid's references rather than her purported father. She forges Carnegie's signature on checks, takes out enormous bank loans, and uses other loans to pay them back once the word spreads throughout society. Charles Beckwith, the president of Citizens National Bank, and Herbert Newton, an investment banker, each gave her sizable personal loans. Nevertheless, Newton filed a federal lawsuit in 1904 after realizing she wouldn't reimburse him. Cassie Chadwick was convicted and sentenced to prison for conspiring to defraud a national bank. Attending the trial himself, Carnegie was particularly irritated by the misspellings she attributed to him, claiming he could have caught her far earlier. Whether you want to call her Cassie, Lydia, Betty, or something else entirely, she was caught more than once, but her lifetime of deception caused harm to many people, most notably Beckwith and Newton. Their fortunes were wrecked by the con man, even if their circumstances were not quite the same as Oscar Van Ryan's. While they are both adept at financial trickery, Maud Beaton's tale differs slightly from Cassie Chadwick's. About 20 years after the Gilded Age in 1902, Cassie arrived in New York with this claim. Nonetheless, her early deceptions coincided with the play. Maud's act of being the illegitimate daughter of a wealthy man was started by Cassie Chadwick, or Betty Bigley, as she was born. Both ladies relied on men underestimating them because of their sex. Nevertheless, instead of creating fictitious investments, Chadwick deceived the majority of institutions with her fictitious inheritance checks. She also frequently remained in the area long enough to wed her targets, as opposed to vanishing like Maud does on Oscar. But there's a reason for these variations. They give Maud permission to specifically go for Oscar, which heightens the tension when one of the major families discovers they are losing the money they rely on. The sudden disappearance of Maud left her identity a mystery until the big reveal. Had she and Oscar been married and Maud had a longer life, it would have been challenging to grow the character without turning her into a suspicious person. As it was, a number of admirers surmised that she was trying to defraud Oscar. Because of Maud's relationship to Cassie Chadwick, the Gilded Age used historical elements into their tale while still making it uniquely their own. The intriguing tale of Cassie Chadwick is not given the attention it merits, and the show keeps the realism despite the improbable premise by employing a similar ruse.